private sector will be maintained.
Someone's got to develop a product that you and I as a consumer are going to want to buy.
The country needs a comprehensive energy plan.
We don't know how long this will last.
Welcome to this edition of For the Record. When you look in the mirror, what do you see? Do you like what you see? Think about this for a minute. When your kids look in a mirror, do they like what they see? Our guest today is Melanie Lynch, instructor of health education at State College High, and she's going to talk about that. Welcome to the show, Melanie.
Thank you.
We talked briefly to get ready for this show. Young people, you have kids in what grades?
10th, 11th, and 12th, with the majority of 11th grade.
Right in the heart of beginning that ascent to young adulthood.
Absolutely.
And what do you see? Do our kids have a good positive image of themselves or not?
Absolutely not. Our media is telling them that if they're not perfect, and the media is setting the example, and there is one example, and if the kids can't match that, they are invaluable. And that's a really hard pill for us to swallow as parents and as educators, because they're spending so many hours with so much media being fed into their brains, and that's the message they're getting, that skinny is beautiful, and for the guys, you know, lean and buff, and there's just one standard, and our kids are almost preoccupied with it.
Do you think that, is it the majority of their negative image comes from their peers, their family, or the media itself?
I would say the media, because the media sets the stage, and then the peers are also absorbing that, and then the peers reinforce, because everybody wants to get to that valuable standpoint. And even the parents now of our generation, we weren't raised as much like this. And so parents are, it's so systemic and it's everywhere, but I think it really does start with the media.
And you teach both boys and girls, correct?
Absolutely.
Is there one sex versus the other sex, or gender? I forget how you're supposed to do that. Is it one or the other that has more of a negative image, or is it both?
I would say when I first started out, it was definitely females, and even historically it was females. But now, with women being more economically independent, they are now looking for men to be more than just providers for money. And again, the media is bringing our young fellows down as well. It's really been a drastic decline in just the 16 years that I've been teaching.
Now, you also are an instructor at Penn State University.
Absolutely.
So now you have adults, young adults, but they still are adults technically in the eyes of the law. Then what kind of mindset do they have versus your high school students?
Oh, I think it's even worse, because they're out there really, you know, without parental supervision. They're dating, going to parties, and really trying to fit in. And unfortunately, that's the piece that helps them fit in better, and not their intelligence. I mean, somewhat personality and all those other things play a role in helping a kid fit in, but because the media has set this down, and it depends on which social group you're in. It depends on how aware they are of this and how much they'll tolerate that and how discriminatory they are towards the media and reject those messages, because there are groups where we just don't see this as a big as a problem.
Now, when you get your classes together in the fall, you have to teach a variety of subjects, but when you talk about the positive body image thing, describe a little bit how you start, you know, what you share with me about how you start the classes, about their perfect, what they see as a perfect person, that kind of thing.
Okay, well, first of all, we've already been through stress management and a couple other, and I think a lot of it is that kids just don't like themselves as much. They're under a lot of stress, they're tense. But I asked them to list on the board, what does the media say is a perfect female? And they list all those, like what, you know, the cover Victoria's Secret, what those models look like, and the male Calvin Klein models, what they look like. But then at the end of that class, I asked them, who is your favorite person and why? Go around the room and share. And they'll say things like, my mom, because no matter what, she's just always there. Even when my room's a mess and I sass off and I come home late with the car and has a big scratch in it, she just loves me. And after we go around and hear many responses like that, I ask them, well, do you think they care about you for the same types of things? And, you know, revisit the board and say, nobody's valuing you for these that matter. Those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. It's kind of a Dr. Seuss quote, and it really is applicable. And kids need to be reminded of that often.
With children today, with young people today, how many of the students in your classes come from their intact two parents' homes, do you think?
I don't have that number in front of my face, but I would definitely say less than 50%.
And do you think that adds to their lack of confidence in themselves?
There's so many issues but definitely, and I think parents are doing the best they can. I think our economic situation is really causing parents to work extra jobs, creating stress in the home. There's a lot of divorce, there's addictions, there's incarcerations, there's deaths, being separated to seek new employment in the family or education. So there really is a lot of stress on kids, and they have a lot more responsibilities than we ever had as kids.
Now, as the teacher, as the instructor for these kids, you're giving a lot more, you're more of an asset to them than probably they go to. Have you noticed that they don't talk to their parents about things where they would really talk to you instead?
Well, I've been very, very fortunate working at State High. I have a great bunch of kids, and if you are just honest and you show them respect, some of them are not used to getting respect, and they really like how that feels, and then they reciprocate that, and then they come around you because they'll remember how you make them feel. So then when they're around you more, they trust you more and they share a lot.
Sure. Well, and that's probably one of the reasons that you're able to win both a state health teacher of the year and also Eastern State, correct?
Yes.
Okay, now how many states is that part of?
It's 13 states and 2 territories, like the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, and
Nice.
13 states.
Now, what made you go through the university and look at health education as the area to teach in?
I also did not come from a rosy-colored home, and I had a basketball coach who just took me under her wing. She demanded excellence out of me, and all of the players, but I had a special bond with her, and I remember graduating thinking my family is over. And I thought, wow, if I could just, and I had no money for college, didn't even plan on going to college, and I just thought if I could just make a difference in one kid's life like she did. And I just thought, no matter what, I'm going to get to college, and I want to be a health and phys ed teacher.
Now, you also have your master's degree in counseling, correct?
Right.
And what is your major area of focus there?
Well, it's a chemical dependency counseling degree, but I focused on body image and eating disorders because my first year teaching, I realized that was our biggest problem, was addictions and especially the eating disorders.
Let's get into more of that when we come back, all right?
Okay.
You're watching For the Record. Our guest today, Melanie Lynch. Back with more after this. Welcome back to For the Record. We're talking about young people and positive body image and other problems that they face throughout high school with Melanie Lynch, health education teacher, and also a master's in counseling. How do you blend the two with your students?
Well, I think when we are just trained as teachers, we're so trained in curriculum, and we design effective curriculum and we deliver it, and sometimes we forget to look up and say, are you still with us? Because we want to do a good job. And I think the counseling degree really helped me say, stop, fix the child first. If they're broken, they're not going to learn anything from you. So I start every class just with a get to know you, like how was the weekend, and just take a couple of minutes, and I think kids really feel like they're heard. And then they kind of buy into the education a little bit more because it's a factory. They go from one class to the next, to the next, to the next. And I need to check in on them. I need to see, are you okay?
Now, what is the size of your classes?
I'm very fortunate with State College. We never have anything more than about 26, and that's considered a very large class.
Sure.
I can have as little as 12. I think 12 is the minimum, but I think they always hit about 20, 22, which is a really great number. And any teacher would hear those numbers and drool over those numbers.
And what's the normal class period time that you have?
48 minutes.
Okay, so you can actually, if a student needs some extra time or an extra counseling a little bit, you can add that to the mix of the class itself, correct?
Well, I do a lot of station work and a lot of student-centered work, so I'm not necessarily always in front of the classroom instructing. And I always eat in my classroom, so I always have a bunch of kids that they'll eat their lunch there, and I just make myself available. So if you stay in your room all the time, kids can find you.
Sure. Now, it's funny, we just talked about eating in the classroom. Let's talk about eating disorders.
Okay.
I would guess both boys and girls are struggling with eating disorders.
Unfortunately, yes.
And how, as a teacher, how is it, can you recognize that ahead of time? Is there certain traits that kids give off that you started to suspect, that kind of thing?
Well, definitely there are some things, asking to leave often. I check their schedule to see if they just had lunch or anything like that. Just being around them, smelling them to see if there was any odor from, purging. just behavior changes, size changes, coloring changes. But you have to keep in mind one thing with an eating disorder, it's like a piece of the puzzle. Just because a kid has one piece doesn't mean they have an eating disorder. Something else could be going on. But I think that's where my counseling background is. I don't care if anything's wrong, I need to be addressing that child's need.
And what then, if you notice that, what's your next step if you notice that? Do you need to talk to your supervisors, go to the nurse? I mean, what kind of thing?
We have a program called SAP, Student Assistance Program, and it's developed for any teacher, parent, community member, nurse, anybody to refer anonymously a child that has any barrier to learning. So then, and I chair that team, and we have all the counselors, the principals. So we gather information on the child, we contact the parent, and then we go from there, trying to get the parent to buy in and getting their feedback, because sometimes they have a lot of information that we're missing.
Now, is that only at the senior high level, or does that start also in the junior high level?
We have the middle school.
Okay, at the middle school level, do you think there aren't kids out there 8 and 9? You don't think?
Oh well,
that have
it's
these
starting
issues?
in the elementary school as well. We have a program. It's new, but kids are being diagnosed as young as 5 with a full-blown eating disorder, kindergarten. And yeah, it's
that boggles the mind.
It really does. It really does.
Now, once the identification happens with a student, clearly, since it's in a class setting, it's not like you can take that child aside and work on them one-on-one. I mean, what avenues are out there for kids resources-wise within the school itself?
Well, we have great counselors in our community, so that's what happens with the SAP. If they're agreeable, our job is not to, quote, fix the child, it's to identify and refer. And then hopefully they get into, and then we just are their case managers. We check in with them, just find out how they're doing. And that's with any kid suffering with anything, a death in their family, or they didn't pass their driving test. We're there. That's our job.
Now, also, along with the eating disorder, and this is going to sound odd, but is it more bulimia? Is it more anorexia?
It's definitely more bulimia. In fact, just as a statistic, there are more male bulimics than there are female anorectics. But to be fair, there are a lot more bulimics out there. So, and bulimia some bulimics do not purge in the sense of vomiting. Some may be exercise purging, so they eat a lot and then purge via exercising, or they don't eat for a couple of days, or they take laxatives. So it's not always, when you hear binge and purge does not always mean vomiting.
Okay, all right. Now, let's also talk about another issue that happens to kids a lot in the schools, drugs and alcohol. That's got to be another problem as well. Certainly State College is known for party atmosphere. How far in, you've been there for 16 years, 18 years in the school?
This will be my 17th year.
Have you seen the drug and alcohol use increase at all over the course of time at State High?
Oh, well, you have to remember, absolutely. You have to remember we live in a college town. These kids can go right downtown and go into their brother's or sister's apartment or dorm. So that's why we are really trying to combat this with quality health education and physical education and just some of the programs. And I think our district is very committed to that. And our new superintendent, I know he's on board with this and really, taking a hard stand on that.
Do you see a problem our age, when
Our
there was age? I'm 40 plus, so I'll talk about me. Underage drinking issues were misdemeanor kinds of things, and but it's become almost a serious crime now. So it's almost, in some ways, do you think it's made it more appealing to try and be that much badder? Do you think?
I don't think that they look at it as a serious crime. I think it's becoming too common. Like, did you get your underage yet? I mean, so many of my students have told me they have underages, and that's sad. So I think it's just becoming almost like a rite of passage, and that's a sad, slippery slope where that stops being shameful or, something you don't want to do.
And that goes back again, I guess, to the other issue about our society as a whole, and sort of these kids are being out on their own a lot sooner because of being a latchkey or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm. I mean, our parents are working hard, and it's almost unheard of where the mom is able to stay home and the kids come home. Like, for example, pregnancy, between 3 and 6 is when most teen pregnancies occur. It's before the parents come home. So they have the house.
Now, how are those statistics gathered?
Oh, your guess is as good as mine. But I definitely just read all the research that the CDC puts out and, do a lot of professional development. And those are the numbers that are given to us.
Sure. Okay. We're We're going to take a break here and come back with more. You're watching For the Record on WHVL. Back with more right after this. Welcome back to For the Record. Our guest today, Melanie Lynch, health education instructor, teacher at State College Area High School, and we're talking about young people, their positive body image, and other issues. We were talking about alcohol and drugs. From my mother's passed away now, so I can say this. I snuck around a lot during my high school years doing things, and I don't think I ever got caught, or maybe it wasn't just shared with me that they caught me. What do instructors need to look for? What are the telltale signs of kids that they're using?
I think a lot of it just personality changes, decreasing grades, especially the things they once cared so much about, where it's just kind of going to the wayside. But I think more importantly is really helping them focus on and setting those high expectations. I did not drink in high school because I had a basketball coach who said, if you drink, if you smoke, if you do drugs, you will be off this team. And back then, that there were no lawsuits, there was no, you know, my daughter's going to get back on the team. So I just knew that the consequences were just too great. And I think sometimes the kids don't realize how great the consequences are. So they're experimenting.
Sure, and let's talk about something else real quick here, and then we'll go back to talking about body image.
Okay.
The other thing that kids tend to do to experiment with, especially if they're not feeling good about themselves, one way they think they can make themselves feel good is to have sex, because they think they equate sex and love together. You're also teaching sex education in school.
I do.
Okay, and I'll try not to giggle while we do this part of it too, but
Well, they don't, so that would be good if you don't.
Well, I was actually, when I was taught in school, our health teacher in 8th grade, when they first taught us about this, said you can laugh today, the first day, and then after that you're done.
Okay.
And she ran a very tight ship. But you know, a lot of people learn most of their stuff from either their friends or from you as an instructor, correct?
I would hope they learn more, because some of the things they come in and ask that they got from their friends is just inaccurate information. So yeah, we try to teach. It's a comprehensive program. So, but getting back to your question, they don't feel good about themselves, and they feel socially awkward. So they drink or they smoke marijuana or something to interact, and then that leads to poor decision making and can lead to a lot of unplanned sex, which then they have no protection for. So it's really, it's just one spirals into the other.
And we're now making stars out of young people that had children out of wedlock, or they did get married. Teen Mom, I mean, that's one of the most popular shows on MTV.
16 and pregnant, it's a disgrace. It really is. It's sending a bad message, and I would just like to get back, and that's what health education does in the classroom. We just really try to tear that apart and dissect the media and say, you know, how many teen moms are not on the show, and what does their daily life look like, and what are the percentages? And we get guest speakers coming in and talking about child support, and so it really hits home a little bit more. And I think that's why they need to be in the classroom.
Right. Now, you almost give them a scared straight kind of a thing.
I don't like to scare them. I like to just, because I think kids are so savvy today.
Sure.
And if you really try that scared, if they trust you, and that's why I teach sex ed last.
Okay.
Because you've built a really nice rapport with them, and they're not afraid to ask questions, and they take the information under advisement. And that's the best you can ask a teenager, is to take something under advisement.
Now, the curriculum that you teach, what kind of microscope has that gone over, like from the school board? Oh,
I mean, absolutely. As a parent myself, I think it's the parents' right to look at it, but I think we have such a great reputation.
Sure.
I know when I first started teaching, everybody wanted to know who I was and what my values were. And once you get a reputation of not bringing your own personal agenda into a classroom and just teaching what the curriculum is, you're kind of left alone, because it's all about trust.
Okay. Now let's talk about, you know, we discussed a little bit about your own website. Why don't you drive people to that site, if you would?
Oh, well, I took a computer class this summer, and I thought, what more can I do to my website? And it's just talking about healthier lifestyle, one day at a time. And I personally work out every day, because without fitness, I can't do my job. And I have the best trainers in State College, one-on-one. But I think everybody needs to find their own, so I put the website so kids can go there to get motivated. And even if they start drinking more water and walking their dog. Start slow. I will find a kid where they are. I will meet them and try to help them along. You're not going to take somebody who's never exercised and is 100 pounds overweight and think you're going to get them ready for the next Olympics. And that's not our goal anyway. We always say fitness is, my definition that I've adopted from my gym is fitness is being able to do whatever you want to do. So if you want to go hiking today, you never want to say, well, I can't. No. And I just need the energy to get to working with teenagers. Sure. You need a lot of energy.
Right, and from the looks of things, with that positive image from the beginning, you know, that really drives what you practice. You're practicing what you preach, basically.
Oh, you know, and that's what keeps me on track, because there have been times where I've fallen off the wagon and I've said, oh, I'm too busy and I'm working a couple of jobs, and then I think I owe it to myself first and foremost. And you will either find an hour a day for exercise or you will find 24 hours to be sick or dead. And I always say, which one is more convenient for you? And I'd rather do the hour. And it's tough sometimes because you have to stay with it. So that's why we need good role models for our kids and good motivators. And the kids that I see that are the most fit come from families that's their lifestyle. They don't sit around and eat all the time. They get up and they're active.
And that goes back to what we talked about probably from the beginning of the show on. You know, the kids that are more involved, it's easier to teach and instruct, but you go after the ones that need more help, really.
Well, absolutely. There are kids in my classroom that their parents are just doing such a great job that, you know, I'm just adding extra reinforcement. And then there are kids where this is the first time they're hearing these messages. And that's what makes me so passionate about it, because when a kid comes up to me and says, I'm changing my behaviors because of you, that's the paycheck you can't cash.
Right, and that's what part of the benefit of why you got into teaching in the first place, right?
That's why. I mean, it wasn't to stand up and teach the same thing 5 times a day. It was to be with the kids, and I love to see the light bulb go off, and just see them like themselves more. That's my goal.
And despite everything we've talked about today, the future for kids is more positive than negative, correct?
Oh, it is, but it's how much we as adults want to put into it, because in 2006, I got to hear Bill Clinton speak. There were 102 of us, and he said, if we do nothing about this obesity epidemic, he said children born in 2000, when they're 17, which is right around the corner, he said it would not be unheard of that they would die of a heart attack in your classroom. And I thought, how do you ever recover from that? And he said, and when they're 18, we're going to not be able to defend our country. So this is really, it's a whole big, it's more than just I don't like myself. This is the first generation that's going to die before their parents. They're going to have less of a lifespan.
Melanie, thanks for doing the show today. You've been watching For the Record. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.